Today I wanted to walk you through how to go about creating a chart or a graph in Google Sheets so that you don't have to draw it out by hand. As you can see, I already have a data set typed into my Google Sheets, and in one column I have study time in minutes, and in the second column I have the exam score recorded as a percentage. In my experience, I found it's a lot easier to label my data in a header row so that in each of the cells that I'm going to pull from to create my chart or graph, there's only a number. Sometimes I found that if there is text or something unique or different about the data, Google Sheets struggles sometimes to generate the graph as easily as I'm trying to get it to populate. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Insert and find the chart function. And when you click on this, Google will automatically try to decide which type of chart or graph that you'd like. And in our biology class, what we typically find the most helpful are going to be some sort of bar chart or a scatter plot graph. And so over here in this chart editor menu that pops up, there's a chart type selection. And when you click on this, it gives you several options to choose from. And so you can scroll through and see all of your different options. The scatter is what's going to be most helpful to us because we're trying to investigate a relationship between the two variables of study time and exam score. Anytime we're investigating the relationship between two variables, the scatter plot graph is going to be easiest for us to seek out if and therefore what type of relationship exists. If we were just comparing different types of data to one another, a bar chart or a bar graph would be more appropriate. So by selecting the scatter chart or scatter plot graph, already our data looks a little bit cleaner and we can almost already see kind of a general trend. You can click on the graph or the chart to kind of slide it over, and then you can play around with the chart editor menu to make your graph look how you want it and to present it in different ways. If you click on the Customize tab of the chart editor menu, what you'll see are different drop-down menus. And so if you already have your columns labeled with your data, it will probably auto-populate labels for you for your different axes, but you could also go over to the chart editor menus and drop those down and select different options to change the text or to change what you want it to actually say. I think my axis labels look fine, but I am going to go to series, which is a way of referring to the data put on the graph. And for my personal preferences, I'm going to change the color of my data points. So now suddenly where these were once blue, it's now red. You can change the size of those circles. So I could go a little bit bigger, or I could stay at the given size or go much smaller. And I could also change the shape that each of the individual data points are represented by. Beyond that, though, there is a checkbox that you can select for a trend line. And this is where we can force Google Sheets to help us investigate the presence of a relationship. In our class, when we try to determine a best fit line, we're looking for a summary of our data. For Google Sheets, that best fit line can be achieved by selecting this trend line option. And so when I click on it, Google will automatically try to show you one of the trend lines. And it's important to play around with those options for the different types of trend lines. One way to try to get the strongest trend line that best matches your data is to click this Show R2 value. And when you click on that, this R squared value, you're going to try to get it as close to 1.0 as possible. So right now, with a linear trend line, I'm getting an R squared value of 0.8, which is pretty close to 1.0. Just to make sure though, I'm going to click around and try these other lines while also paying attention to how that r squared value changes. So instead of linear, if I select exponential, the trend line that shows on the graph is still very similar, but my r squared value has gone down. So that tells me that that's a less of a fit to the data that we have. If I select polynomial, now I have 0.86, and if you compare that to the linear line, it's a little bit stronger because it was 0.81. And just to double check, I'm also going to see the logarithmic one, and so it's not quite as strong at 0.83. So I'm going to go back to the polynomial one because that gave me the strongest r squared value. So that tells me that this general trend line that we've put in best matches our data. Once I've kind of identified it, just to clean up the graph, I'm going to uncheck the r squared value, and I'm also going to get rid of the legend or the key that's showing up. So if I go to one of my other drop-down menus, select legend, and there isn't an option to deselect it, but instead under position, if you go in here, you can select none so that it disappears. And just by doing that, suddenly my graph takes up much more space and is more spread out, and just has a cleaner look because I don't have multiple data sets overlapping. I have no need for the legend to distinguish between different shapes or colors. So you can play around with some of these different options, but on the whole, this gives you a pretty solid graph, and the more times you do this, the quicker it goes. And so if you're not doing it by hand, you don't have to figure out the scale, you don't have to plot the data. Google Sheets does it all for you.